They were the parents of 3 successful children. At the age of 70, they received a diagnosis as cruel as any disease: contempt. Their own children said there was nothing more to be done, that they were an unbearable burden. They were left on a deserted road to die. No appeal to love worked, no memory of the past made a difference. All hope was gone. Their children, who had every comfort money could buy, did not lift a finger to save them. But in the end, it was not one of the children who intervened. It was a complete stranger, a simple man driving an old car. What this man did in secret, without asking permission and without expecting anything in return, brought the world to its knees. He risked everything to save 2 souls who were not even his family. And when the truth about the children's cruelty and the stranger's kindness came to light, everything changed. This is the true story of how love, when it's real, doesn't need DNA. It needs courage. And how sometimes the greatest miracles come from the most unexpected hearts. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and be sure to comment down below where you're watching from. We love to know. Have you ever felt like a burden? Have you ever looked at the people you're supposed to love and seen in their eyes that your mere existence was an inconvenience? It's a pain that tears the soul apart. Now, imagine that those people are your own children. 3 children who, in an act of unbelievable cruelty, decided to get rid of their elderly parents once and for all. They left them, Rose and Anthony, on a dusty road forgotten by time, for the relentless California sun to finish the dirty work. "You are a burden we can no longer bear," were the last words they heard before the black Mercedes sped off, disappearing over the horizon like a nightmare. But what those cold-hearted monsters could not imagine, not even in their wildest, greediest dreams, was that they were throwing away, along with their parents, a fortune of $20 million. Rose woke up that morning with a lump in her throat that was already painfully familiar. It wasn't a physical pain. At 70, she knew how to distinguish very well between the body's protests and the soul's screams. It was that silent anguish that blossoms when you realize you are no longer welcome in the place that should be your refuge, your home. The house was quiet, but it was a heavy, dense silence, charged with an electricity that promised a storm. Beside her, Anthony was still asleep, his breathing labored, a constant reminder of his fragile heart and the pile of worries that consumed them. She watched him for a moment, tracing with her eyes the wrinkles that time had carved on the face of the man she had loved for 50 years, a map of a life of honest work, of sleepless nights caring for sick children, of smiles offered even when the world seemed to be falling apart. "How did we get here, my love?" she whispered into the void, a light touch on his grey hair. With the care of someone stepping on broken glass, Rose got up, each joint a painful protest. In the kitchen, the usual ritual, preparing breakfast, even knowing she would be met not with gratitude, but with disapproving glances and complaints about every penny spent. "Mom, this waste again?" Sarah's voice cut through the kitchen's silence. She appeared in the doorway, still in her bathrobe, but with an expression that could freeze hell over. "Look at how many eggs you're frying. We don't have money to spare for your extravagance." Rose felt her heart shrink a little more. 3 eggs, just 3 eggs for 4 adults. Where, dear God, was the extravagance in that? "Honey, I just thought you'd like to eat something before you leave." "I'll eat out. It's cheaper than supporting this extravagance every day." Sarah threw a pile of bills on the kitchen table with a dry, accusing thud. "By the way, look what came yesterday. Another $500 for Dad's medicine. $500, Mom. That's more than half of what I spend on myself the entire month." Rose stared at the scattered papers as if they were sentences of guilt. Every prescription, every test, every pill had become a weapon. Irrefutable proof that they were a burden, an unbearable weight. "Sarah, dear," the doctor said, "they are essential for your father's heart." Essential? Sarah let out a bitter laugh, devoid of any warmth, that poisoned the air. "You know what's essential? Me being able to pay my own bills without having to support two people who contribute absolutely nothing to this house." The words hit her like daggers. Contribute nothing. Was that what she was now? The woman who raised 3 children, who sewed their clothes, cooked their meals, who stayed up all night by their feverish beds, who did laundry for others to put food on the table, now contributed nothing. Anthony appeared in the kitchen, a bit unsteady, an effect of the morning dizziness his blood pressure medication caused him. His face was still creased from the pillow, but Rose saw in his eyes the pain of someone who had heard everything. "Good morning, daughter," he said to Sarah, forcing his usual gentle smile, even as their world crumbled. Sarah didn't even bother to answer. She grabbed a slice of bread, spread a nearly transparent layer of butter on it, and left the kitchen, chewing angrily, as if every bite were a protest against their existence. With trembling hands, Rose served Anthony his coffee. They sat in silence, the food going down like ash in their throats, each lost in thoughts too painful to share. She didn't mean it," Anthony murmured, but his voice held no conviction. "Yes, she did, my love, and you know what? She's right." Rose stared at her plate, searching for answers that weren't there. "We've become a burden to them." "Rose, don't say such a thing." "It's the truth, Anthony. Look at us. We live in fear of turning on an extra light, in fear of eating one more egg, in fear of existing." The sound of the front door opening interrupted their conversation. It was Robert, arriving from the night shift at the factory, his uniform stained with grease, exhaustion etched into every line on his face. He walked into the kitchen, looked at his parents, and sighed, the sigh of someone bracing for another problem. "Dad, I need to talk to you." His voice was formal, distant. This was not her boy, the little child she used to hug after a nightmare. "Of course, son. What is it?" Robert pulled out a chair, his body heavy with exhaustion and resentment. "The situation can't go on like this. Sarah is right. The medical expenses are becoming unsustainable." Rose felt the floor disappear from under her. Robert had always been the most sensible one, the mediator. If even he... "Son, we can try to reduce the medication, talk to the doctor." Anthony tried, his voice choked with emotion. "It's not just that, Dad. It's everything. The food, the electricity, the water, the space. This house can't hold 5 adults anymore." 5 adults. Rose repeated the phrase in her mind. When had they stopped being parents and become just adults? "We're thinking of a solution," Robert continued, avoiding their gaze. "A solution that will be better for everyone." "What kind of solution?" Rose asked, her heart frozen with dread, already knowing she didn't want to hear the answer. "There's a place, a home for the elderly. It's not the worst, it's in a decent neighborhood. You'd have medical assistants, other people your age to talk to. You want to put us in a home." Anthony's voice was a mere whisper of pain. "It's not putting you in a home, Dad. It's an opportunity for you to have a more suitable life." Tears burned in Rose's eyes. "Robert, this house, your father built it with his own hands, brick by brick. Every corner here holds our history. Mom, please don't make this difficult. You know the situation is unsustainable." At that exact moment, Brian appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, though it was almost noon. At 32, he treated the house like a poorly run hotel. "Are you talking about the nursing home?" he asked, yawning. "It's about time. I could barely sleep again last night with Dad's coughing, and Mom gets up all night to go to the bathroom." "It's not a nursing home, Brian," Robert tried to correct him, without much force. "Whatever it's called, the important thing is to resolve this quickly. My girlfriend doesn't even want to come here anymore. She gets embarrassed seeing you two hanging around. Brian's words were daggers, sharp and cruel, embarrassed. Their very existence caused embarrassment. Anthony stood up slowly, each movement a superhuman effort. "I'm going to take a walk," he murmured. Rose knew. He was going to cry where his children couldn't see his weakness. "Mom," Robert tried a gentler tone, "we're not doing this out of malice. Life has become difficult for everyone." Rose looked at her son, who had once been her pride, and didn't recognize him. Where was the boy who had promised to take care of them in their old age? "I understand, son. You have your lives. So you agree to go?" Rose fell silent. Through the window, she saw Anthony standing in his small garden, his shoulders slumped under the weight of rejection. "We need to talk," she said finally. "Give us some time to think. Don't take too long." Sarah reappeared, already dressed to go out. "I've already scheduled a visit there for tomorrow. The sooner we resolve this, the better for everyone." Rose watched her 3 children leave, each to their own life, leaving behind the silence of abandonment that approached like a storm cloud. She found Anthony in the garden, sitting on the bench he had built himself. "Did you hear?" he asked without looking at her. "I heard. 50 years of marriage, Rose. 3 children raised with so much love." "I know, my dear. Did we fail at something? Were we bad parents?" Rose held his calloused hand. "We gave everything we had, Anthony, everything we were. And now, we're a burden." They stayed there, hand in hand, looking at the garden that would soon no longer be theirs. "Rose," Anthony said quietly, "if we go to that place, it will be to die." She knew it was true. A broken heart was a more lethal disease than any other. "At least we'll be together," she murmured. But a strange restlessness took hold of her. Fate, she felt, had not yet had its final say. Inside Anthony's worn wallet, hidden among faded photos of their children when they still loved them, an envelope he didn't even know existed held a secret that would arrive too late for some, and at the perfect time for others. 3 weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the house became suffocating. Rose woke up every day with a knot in her stomach, a terrible premonition tightening her chest. The children barely looked them in the eye. They came and went like irritated strangers. On that fateful morning, while hanging clothes in the laundry room, Rose heard the voices, low, conspiratorial. The same tone they used as children when planning some mischief, but now the mischief was them. "Is everything arranged?" It was Sarah's voice, a venomous whisper. "Robert has already settled it with the people from the home. They're picking them up this afternoon." Rose's legs gave way. "Today? Without even a warning? And what if they don't want to go?" Brian asked, and Rose could imagine the contempt on his face. "They'll go." Robert's voice was cold, final, "because they have no choice." Rose's world collapsed. She clung to the washing machine, her heart hammering against her ribs. They were getting rid of their parents forever, like someone throwing out old furniture. "We'll say it's just until they get settled," Robert continued, the general commanding his cruel operation. Afterward they'll get used to it." "And the house?" asked Sarah. "We'll finally have some space." "I've already thought about that." Brian's excited voice cut through Rose's heart like a blade. "I can turn their room into my office. I've always wanted a home office." Rose covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Their room, the sanctuary of 50 years of their life, would be an office for the son who barely knew what it meant to work. "It has to look like we're doing this out of love, understand?" Robert instructed. "We cry a little, say it's hard for us too, that we'll visit every week." "We're going to visit?" The genuine surprise in Brian's voice was the final proof of the sham. "Of course not," Robert laughed, "but they don't need to know that now." Staggering, Rose returned to the garden. She found Anthony watering his tomatoes, his body present, but his soul far away. "Anthony," she whispered, and when he turned, he saw the desperation etched on her face. "It's today." "They're coming to get us today." The hose fell from his hand. The water continued to gush, soaking the earth around the tomatoes he would never see ripen. "What do you mean?" Rose told him everything, every word, every plan. The color drained from Anthony's face. "Without even telling us," he moaned, the sound of a wounded animal. "Anthony, they don't want us anymore. For real, forever." They hugged right there, in the middle of the garden, crying like two lost children. A lifetime of love and dedication, and this was how it ended. An hour later, the white van pulled up in front of the house. The children staged their farewell with false tears and cold hugs. "We'll visit you next week," Sarah lied, the kiss on her cheek burning like a branding iron. "We'll call tomorrow," Robert added another lie to the collection. Rose and Anthony got into the van without looking back. Through the rear window, she saw her children going back into the house, hurrying to get away from the scene of the crime they had just committed. The van pulled away, leaving behind every street, every square, every piece of the life they had built. Inside Anthony's wallet, the yellowed envelope remained sealed, a ticking time bomb of fate. Justice was coming, and when it arrived, it would be merciless. 2 weeks, 2 weeks in that place that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Rose woke up every day to the sound of collective coughs and the quiet sobs of some forgotten soul. Anthony seemed to shrink with each passing day, his eyes dull, his spirit broken. He didn't eat, barely spoke. He was dying slowly from the inside out. "I dreamed of our garden, Rose," he whispered one morning. "I was watering the tomatoes. No calls, no sign of the children. They had been completely erased from the life they had created." One morning, in the cafeteria, as he stared at the grey porridge on his plate, Anthony looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, Rose saw a spark of life in his eyes. "Rose, I can't take this place anymore. I know, my love. Neither can I." "If we're going to die anyway," he said, his voice low but firm, "let it be on the street, breathing fresh air, not in here, smelling of death." That spark ignited a flame within her, a desperate hope. 3 days later, in the dead of night, they fled. Like two prisoners, they slipped through the silent corridors, past the nurse sleeping at the reception desk, and out onto the street. The cold pre-dawn air had never felt so sweet. They walked for hours, aimlessly, just to get away from that hell. The sun was already high when they reached a deserted highway. Exhaustion, hunger, and thirst consumed them. Anthony, with his fragile heart, couldn't go on. "Rose, I can't anymore." He collapsed into her arms, his face pale, his lips beginning to turn blue. "I love you, Rose. I love you too, my dear. I always have." There in the middle of nowhere, under the scorching sun, they held each other, perhaps for the last time. In desperation, Rose looked up at the sky and begged for a miracle. And then she heard it. The rumble of an approaching engine. An old car, a beat-up white Chevy, pulled up beside them. A young man with simple clothes and kind eyes jumped out and ran over. "My God! What are you two doing out here alone?" It was Mark. He didn't ask questions. He just saw the urgency, the pain, and acted. He put the nearly unconscious Anthony in his car and sped toward the nearest hospital. "Why did you stop?" Rose asked, her voice choked with emotion. Mark looked at them in the rearview mirror, a sad smile on his face. "You reminded me of my grandparents. I just did what anyone would do." But Rose and Anthony knew the truth. No, it wasn't what anyone would do. Their own children hadn't. Sometimes guardian angels drive old cars. A week later, Anthony opened his eyes in a hospital room. Rose was by his side, holding his hand. He had survived a major heart attack by a thread. And Mark? Mark hadn't left their side. He slept in the hallway, brought coffee, and took care of them as a real son would. When Anthony asked why a stranger would do all that, the answer came with the arrival of Anna, Mark's wife. Anna hugged Rose as if she had known her a lifetime. "Mark told me everything," she said, her voice filled with an indignation that was on their behalf. "And then they made the most unbelievable proposal Rose could have ever imagined. We haven't been able to have children," Anna explained, her eyes welling up. "We always dreamed of a big family. When Mark found you, it was as if God was giving us the parents we never had. We want you to come live with us," Mark said, "as our family." Rose's tears were of pure disbelief and gratitude. After so much pain, so much abandonment, love appeared in the most unexpected way. 2 weeks later, they were home. A small house, but full of warmth. They were called Mom Rose and Dad Anthony. There was laughter in the kitchen, the smell of good food, the sound of a real family. It was then that the mailman arrived, with an official and urgent envelope looking for an Anthony Miller. Inside that envelope was the answer to their children's cruelty and the key to a new future. Together, in the living room, with Mark and Anna by their side, Anthony opened the letter. His eyes scanned the legal jargon until he turned pale. "Rose, this can't be." It was an inheritance. From his grandfather, a man he barely knew, properties, and a sum of money that had been accruing interest for 20 years. "How much, Anthony? How much money?" He turned the page, his hand trembling, and read the number aloud. $20 million, Rose. 20 million. The silence was broken by Anthony's sudden, painful realization. The letters. They had been trying to locate me for years, sending letters to our old address. They must have arrived when we were already living with the kids. They knew Rose. They knew everything and threw us away anyway. The money brought no joy, only the confirmation of the deepest betrayal. But Mark placed a hand on Anthony's shoulder. "It didn't come too late, Dad. It came at the right time. The time when you finally found a family that truly loves you." And Rose knew he was right. She also knew that sooner or later the vultures would return, sniffing out the scent of money. And this time, she would be ready. A month later, the black Mercedes pulled up in front of Mark and Anna's modest house. Robert, Sarah, and Brian got out, dressed in expensive clothes, arrogance stamped on their every gesture. They didn't come because they missed them. They came with the confidence of predators that had cornered their prey. When Rose opened the door, the conversation was short and direct. The false concerns, the flimsy excuses, and then the real reason. "The inheritance situation, Dad," Robert said. "That money belongs to the family. It's ours by right." "Right?" Anthony's voice trembled with contained rage. "You lost any right when you abandoned us to die." Their audacity was limitless. The proposal was simple and sickening. They would come back home, be cared for, and the money would be managed by the family. It was at that moment that Anna arrived, and the lioness that existed in that sweet, gentle woman awoke. "I am their daughter," she said, facing the three of them, and the shock on their faces was almost comical. What followed was a battle, not of strength, but of character. On one side, greed and blood. On the other, love and choice. "Enough!" Rose's voice cut through the air, firmer than ever. She looked at the three faces she had once loved more than anything and felt a frightening peace. "Our decision is that you will leave our house now and never come back." The threats, the pleas, the crocodile tears. Nothing worked. They were kicked out, not just from that house, but from Rose and Anthony's lives forever. As the Mercedes screeched its tires and disappeared, Rose leaned on Anna, exhausted but free. "It's over," she whispered. 2 years later, Mark and Anna's house had been transformed. With the money, they didn't buy luxury, but expanded their love. They opened a home for other abandoned elderly people, a true family built not by blood, but by compassion. Rose and Anthony finally had what they had always dreamed of, a house full of life, laughter, and grandchildren, like little Helena, Mark and Anna's daughter, who brightened their days. The letters from their children still arrived, but they went straight into the trash, unopened. That afternoon, sitting on the porch, surrounded by people who loved her, Rose watched the sunset. She understood the most painful and valuable lesson of her life. Sometimes you have to lose the family. You have to find the family you deserve. When Anthony passed away 3 years later, sleeping peacefully in her arms, his will sealed their fate. The entire inheritance was left to Mark, Anna, and the foundation that cared for their new family members. To Robert, Sarah, and Brian, he left the symbolic sum of $1 each, accompanied by a letter with a single sentence. "I leave you the same thing you gave me when I needed it most, nothing." Justice sometimes isn't blind. It just waits for the right moment to be perfectly clear.